Grace is a nonprofit right here in Clifford Park, right in the heart of New Market, where we have an emphasis on sports through youth development from college and career access. We here at the base believe in the greatness of Roxbury, particularly in the New Market area. And we want to be the light of this particular area and show the greatness that's happening around. But also, we appreciate the vision and the efforts of the city of Boston and Mayor Wu of the greatness and how she wants to continue to push forward and allow our young folks to continue to be great through the things that they love, and that's through sports, baseball, basketball, as well as softball. So thank you all for being here, and we want to continue to be that big effort and push for greatness here in New Market. So thank you. And next is Tim Choate of New Market Bid.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Tim Choate. I'm part of the New Market Bid. Let's just say I'm in recovery right now, and I came out here to better my life. I came from Western Mass. When I got here, I introduced myself to them, the people at New Market Bid, and that was the best step I ever did. From there, I got turned on to Elliott Human Health Services, which helped me. I was homeless when I came out here, addicted to every drug you could name, and living on the streets, not caring about when my next shower, meal, or anything came. Now I have that refound sense for myself, since I met these people. A few of my crew members are here with me. They're here to support. They're also going to speak. We're all kind of similar in the same boat. We, let's just say, we all got housing now we're no longer using. And it's thanks to, in part, to New Market Bid and all the people that help together. And that's what we need. We need everybody to continue to stand together and just move together as one. With that, I'm going to pass it to Tasha. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tasha. I've been homeless on Mass Ave for about 13 years, on and off, struggling with addiction. I met New Market, BID, Carol and Sue about a year ago, and since then I've gotten housing, I've gotten clean, I've gotten all my warrants and stuff taken care of. It feels like good every day to wake up and go to work and know that I'm beautifying an area that nobody really cared about before. They give jobs to people who no one else would give jobs to, and I'm very grateful for that. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Jacob Pico, and I guess my story is similar to theirs. I came out here from Chelsea, lived in a foster home, became homeless, was out here 7 years, became addicted, all the bad stuff. But as soon as I met New Market, it was like a light turned on inside. And since then, it's just been straight path, doing good. I feel good inspiring others when I clean out here, trying to better the community, trying to, make Atkinson better than what it is, because it should be better, helping all these homeless people. Seeing as how I got help from New Market, I feel like everybody else should be helped as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I am really grateful to everyone who is standing with us today, but also who has been working alongside and partnering with the City of Boston and the community of incredible, inspirational people who we see make life possible and meaningful for so many. We are here today at the base thanks to Steph and his entire team's efforts. We're so grateful for all that they do to make opportunities available to young people here in Boston, on the national stage and beyond, and want to do all that we can to continue supporting them and all of the amazing youth development organizations in Boston. But we're here also to talk about the challenges that are present because of forces that are outside the city's direct control of the opiate crisis and housing costs and mental health epidemic, but that we are making real progress on every day thanks to the coordinated efforts of so many who are here. I also want to just thank the partners across all different sectors who have been working so hard. We're here with several of the elected officials who are our key partners and represent some of our most important allies in this work. You'll hear soon from District Attorney Kevin Hayden, who's been wonderful in his time and expanding his efforts. You'll hear from State Representative and Chairman Aaron Michaelwitz, who, representing the entire state legislature, have been incredibly supportive with funding and expertise and support for all of our multifaceted efforts here at Mass and Cass. We're also joined by staff from many, many different organizations. I'll start with the City of Boston, everyone who's working on our coordinated response team under Tanya Del Rio's leadership, Jim Green, who has been overseeing the city's efforts around homelessness for many, many, many years now, and folks like Dr. Basola Ojukutu, who couldn't be here today, but who has sent her trusty right-hand person, Dr. Michelle Clark, who will speak in a little bit, Chief of Housing, Sheila Dillon, and so many others. Commissioner Michael Cox will share a few words as well about the very, very important role that the Boston Police have been playing and will continue to play, and so many others on our team. We are thankful to community partners, the workforce of the City of Boston, represented by many of our labor partners. Here today we have with us leadership from SEIU 888, AFSCME Council 93, and SEIU 1199, who represent various of the dedicated workforce at many of the impacted sites in and near the Mass and Cass area. Thank you for all that you do on behalf of your members, and thank you for your partnership with the city. And last but certainly not least, and really our heartbeat in the area, is our community partners who are on the ground providing services from Pine Street Inn to the Phoenix, Greater Boston Food Bank, so many other, as you heard, the New Market bid. Sue Sullivan couldn't be here, but we thank Carol Costello for being here in her place. And our partners in the faith community, Pastor Sam Acevedo is here, and so many others who have been integral to the City of Boston's work. I want to just start by thanking Tim, Tasha, and Jacob for not only sharing your story here today, which is kind of stressful in front of so many cameras and people, but for showing what so many others are experiencing now and how much inspiration there is at Mass and Cass. You all are among a group of now hundreds of individuals who give me the strength and hope and faith to keep going in this work, because we know what you're capable of, how much you're giving back, and all that it required was addressing and recognizing the many systems that had already failed, so many in our city and beyond, and then finding a way to coordinate the resources that have already been here but haven't been easily accessible. And so your feedback in how to keep making that better for others and all the work that you're doing to continue to improve the area today is making a huge difference, and we're so thankful for your leadership. Okay, so there are several speakers after me, but I'm going to need to take a little time because we are here to share updates for a major phase change at Mass and Cass in preparation for the coming cold temperatures and in response to growing public safety concerns. But I am already here, there are components of that we will get into more detail in ordinance that we will be introducing in the coming days. A set of transitional beds to help absorb this transition and make sure that there won't be folks left with nowhere to go, and coordinated operations among our entire team and led by the Boston Police Department that you'll hear more details about. But there's already, I think, significant confusion out there about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what has been working or not. So I do want to just give some background so that everybody understands where we've been and what we have learned along the way. First of all, every policy that the City of Boston contemplates always starts with people. Who are the people who are impacted at the center of this, and what are the needs? And so when we talk about who is represented at Mass and Cass, it is, of course, the community of people living with substance use who are in need of treatment, recovery services, and often housing. It is also a growing number of individuals who are present dealing drugs, committing violence, human trafficking, and other criminal activity, often shielded by tents and tarps in the area and causing public safety concerns for everyone in the community. When we talk about who's at Mass and Cass, we're also talking about our workforce, people who are just trying to go to their jobs every single day, many of whom work for the City of Boston or in public service, whether it is employees at our Boston Public Health Commission, which is located right there, or at the Boston Fire Department, whose headquarters are also right in the area, employees of the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department or House of Corrections, who are also just trying to get to work and serve the public, employees of the organizations like Greater Boston Food Bank and others in the area, and small businesses like Food Pack and so many. We're also talking about abutters and neighbors, many of whom have been trying for years at this point to come up with solutions, to work with the city, and to advocate because they are facing significant public safety concerns as well. These are students, young athletes who are using the park and surrounding areas, seniors and families nearby raising their children. And finally, in some ways, the folks who are closest to understanding the complexities and all of the work that has been going on is the team on the ground who has been delivering those services day to day. Our Boston Public Health outreach workers, our partners doing outreach from organizations mentioned previously, and also such as Victory and New Market Bid and others, Boston Public Health, Boston Healthcare for the Homeless program as well, and the Boston Police Department street outreach officers who have been working hand in hand to support the housing and case management and recovery services that have been going on. We know from having worked with and being alongside all of these various communities at Mass and Cass for, in our administration, 1.5 years now, that this is also a set of challenges that changes in the daytime versus the nighttime, and it changes season by season. And so what we are doing now is taking the window of time before temperatures drop and it becomes truly life or death when you are living on the street and don't have housing in winter. All of these challenges require coordination among our public health and housing and recovery community and public safety. Today we are doubling down on that approach of emphasizing that it takes all of this. It takes every level of government. It takes the court system. It takes the district attorney's office, the state legislature, and the governor and her administration, the Suffolk County leadership, as well as the city of Boston. What we are talking about today in introducing an ordinance would be empowering the Boston Police to address the significant public safety challenges that are present by giving them the ability to enforce taking down tents and tarps. This would only apply, as you'll hear in more detail in later speakers and with the language coming out in later days, this would only apply to individuals who have already been offered adequate housing and shelter, who have also been offered transportation to that shelter, and who have been given the opportunity to store their personal belongings. That's very important for protecting the civil liberties and the humanity of those we are looking ultimately to serve. We are also going to be introducing a small number of transitional beds at a location in the area. I know this has caused some confusion and concern as well, in the concerns that there's a concentration of services or the creation of what has already been called in the media, quote unquote, a fourth shelter. So I think it's really important to clarify what we mean. When we are taking such serious steps to curb the public safety concerns and to return the operations of Atkinson Street to a functioning vehicular street open to travel. That means that there will be some serious disruption as well in the dynamic for people who have been used to gathering and congregating at Mass and Cass. And for those who are conducting criminal activity, that disruption is certainly warranted, and we will not be tolerating illegal activity in any hub or location of the city as we do in our neighborhoods. For those who are on the street because they are living in those tents and tarps overnight, and our teams know, because we are on the ground every single day, that this is a relatively small number of individuals who actually do not have housing and who are seeking shelter and services. We'll be providing up to 30 transitional beds in a nearby location just to manage this and absorb any of the disruption that happens. This is not going to be a permanent shelter. It is not going to be a day shelter. It is going to be an area where individuals who need a place to go will have the opportunity to have a safe and clean and protected area to sleep at night. And as they are placed in and connected to housing opportunities, whether it is being on the pathway to permanent housing, as so many of the inspirational individuals we've seen today have acquired, or moving into one of the open spots in one of our other transitional housing sites, as these individuals who are initially connected to this overflow site are placed in permanent locations or a different transitional location, these 30 beds will be shut down. And so it's really not intended to be a revolving door or backfilling spots as a permanent location, but just to manage this very significant transition that will happen so that we can return Atkinson Street and the surrounding area to standard operations as roadways open to vehicular travel. Finally, and you'll hear in more detail from the real expert, to sustain all of this and to maintain a phase change and a different dynamic in the area, we will be relying on our cross-functional teams led by the Boston Police, who have a detailed plan, and I'm so grateful to Commissioner Cox for taking this on. Some people have asked, well, why not? Why have you waited this long to take any kind of action related to this? Are you admitting that previous approaches have failed and now you're totally switching direction? And the answer is we are absolutely doubling down on what the city and our partners have been doing because it's been working. The creation of infrastructure for low-threshold housing to almost 200 units that didn't exist at all before January of 2022 and have now served more than 500 individuals, 149 people now in permanent housing, having moved through this program, connected with medical treatment and services. That has all been working. We need to address the significant public safety concerns. When the commissioner started in his new role a year ago, Mass and Cass was one of the very first items that we talked about together and that he has been working on, studying, measuring, and setting up a plan for. As he filled key roles and set his leadership team and assessed the situation across an entire seasonal cycle of a year, we are now at a point where we're excited and grateful that Boston Police is stepping into having the full knowledge and information at hand under our leadership to be able to really support the type of public safety actions that so many of our public health outreach workers and community partners have been asking for. You'll hear in a little bit about how there will be a 24/7 presence of officers on the street after the operations begin. You'll hear about teams that will be set up, that will be on hand to cover the entire city to make sure that we are not simply displacing and creating a different set of challenges elsewhere in the city and in our neighborhoods. And there will also be an central operations post set up so that until in this transition period, which will last several weeks, maybe several months, that Boston Police will be directly in the same space as representatives from all of our other public safety agencies, the Boston Public Health Commission, our housing experts, so that everyone can troubleshoot in real time, adjust any of the strategies day to day, see what is needed, learn from what is happening, and be able to keep improving our operations. I just want to emphasize that it has been certainly a tremendous learning experience, but also a set of very important successes and progress for the city of Boston. Compared to where we were in 2020 or 2019, or even right after the Long Island Bridge shut down in late 2014, for the very first time, there's an infrastructure built up of hundreds of low-threshold housing units that we continue now to see the state expanding statewide as well, with 6 additional similar sites having been set up in other cities across the Commonwealth, taking from the learnings that Boston has had and the successes that we've had. We have also seen the impact and the improvements from daily coordination of almost a dozen agencies from our Public Works Department, who has had a very serious presence and daily, multiple times a day, strategies and coordination to make sure that we are putting the resources to ensure sanitation and public health from a cleanliness point of view. And the coordinated response team that troubleshoots every single morning at 8:45 with their calls to check in on what happened last night, what the needs are, who the individuals are who need additional outreach, and what the plan is to deliver those services. That has created a different situation now than ever before. I want to be clear and acknowledge that the city of Boston's so-called law enforcement sweeps in the past have not been successful. That is not what we are trying to replicate. It is very different what we are proposing today. Not only was there absolutely no infrastructure set up back then, several years ago at this point, when those images of wheelchairs being crushed and really just intensive efforts on the public safety side without the coordination, support, and full long-term plan were in place. But today, we have a year and a half of being on the ground, really understanding the situation up close, knowing the people who are in need of services and knowing who is not in need of services and are there to prey upon those who are hoping for housing and shelter and recovery. And so I'm very grateful to everyone who's here. I'm sure everyone will have more questions at the end as well, but I just want to emphasize that just as I said in January of 2022, that the actions we were taking then weren't solving homelessness, but would be a big step forward. So today, we are, I believe we're moving towards a very important phase change that will be a significant difference for the many, many communities made up of workers and residents at Mass and Cass. But this is also not the solution to the opiate crisis or homelessness. We're going to keep working on all of those efforts together, but this is necessary for the public safety, the health, the well-being of all, and to continue our approach of putting people at the center with housing and recovery. Thank you so much. I'm going to just quickly read the names of those who are going to follow so we don't have to keep coming up to do introductions. Next will be Boston Police Commissioner Michael Cox, followed by District Attorney Kevin Hayden, Chairman Aaron Michaelwitz, Dr. Michelle Clark from the Boston Public Health Commission, and then Dr. Denise de las Nueces from Boston Healthcare for the Homeless.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to, certainly read some comments here, and then I'm going to get more into what we're going to do at the conclusion of this. So, as the mayor pointed out, there have been successes clearly down here with helping certainly a lot of people, and that's because of all the dedication and the people in the city of Boston and all our employees, our people in our police department, the public health team, and many others in the city agencies and numerous partners, including multiple other agencies that aren't here represented today. Officers have been down in Mass and Cass 24/7 for quite a long time, but things in the area, particularly around Atkinson Street and Southampton Street in recent months, have certainly dictated that we need to make a different change, as we've seen double-digit increases in gun arrests, double-digit increases in assaults, and actually just making it almost unbearable for the people that work down there. It's clearly becoming more of a public safety issue, and so this is why we're part of the reason why we're here today. Boston Police Department, as you know, is tasked with keeping the public safe and enforcing laws, and we need a realistic environment in order to accomplish both things. The area remains overcrowded with more than over 200 people per day down there, which presents a series of challenges impacting public health, public safety of those living and working in the area. The proposed changes we're discussing today would give the Boston Police Department the authority to do something about the situation. The ordinance would provide clear authority and a path for our officers to keep individuals who are struggling with homelessness and mental health and substance abuse disorder safe, quite simply, and the people that are down there to work with them. It will also allow our officers to better serve the residents and businesses in daily lives and safety that have been disproportionately impacted by, certainly the situation in the area and the rise in crime in the area. Removing the cloaks and tents and tarps and other makeshift temporary shelters will lessen the appeal of the area and those coming to prey on individuals, as the mayor made note earlier. These changes will allow officers to enforce the laws, forcing those who engage in criminal activity out into the light. Our goal is to allow those who need help to have the space to get it, at the same time keeping the residents and other workers in the areas, all our workers in the areas, safe, as well as the officers themselves. We're asking City Council to give, certainly this ordinance, an approval. We need the additional authority to be able to implement this. The ordinance would give the police the authority to take down the tarps and tents and structures that are occupying public ways and oftentimes are used to shield the criminal disorder that goes on there. This proposal will give the BPD the authority to proactively prevent encampment, or at least address the encampments that are established in our parks and in our neighborhoods and on public ways that actually create this environment where so much disorder and criminal activities occur. The actions authorized in the ordinance will take place only when the city is able to provide access to available shelter for those in need. Without the ordinance, our policy requires 48-hour notice to remove tents and tarps outside the voluntary street cleaning process. Given that we've learned how the drug market and other activities in the area operate, this is just not a realistic, a way for us to be able to address the situations. We're seeking authority to shut down the spaces that are creating unsanitary and dangerous conditions, and supporting the drug market that goes on there, as well as the other criminal activities that are in the area. As part of these efforts, we'll format our outreach teams to be more mobile and agile to include public health and other supportive services in hotspot areas where encampments may try to reestablish. We'll be evaluating this plan shift by shift, day by day, to make sure any adjusted needed areas in the plan are addressed, and any area in the city that may start to be impacted are actually addressed real time. And let me talk about fear of crime for a hot second. Part of what we're trying to do is we're going to have officers in mobile units that are in certain locations, so as people start to disperse, throughout the city, that we are actually, with this ordinance in hand, the ability to stop the structures and tents from reoccurring in neighborhoods and all the disorder that goes with that, behind that, we'll be able to address it real time. We're going to have people strategically placed in places where we think people may go, but more importantly, if we see or hear of any other place, we're going to real time try to address it as fast as possible. What we've found is that a lot of the people here don't live here, and for the most part, once their criminal activities are out in the light, they either move on or, we address it through the criminal justice system as it should be addressed. I know people may be fearful that it's going to come to their neighborhood, but the reality is we are going to be in every neighborhood just to make sure that doesn't occur. I want to reiterate, we're going to be in every neighborhood with these mobile teams to make sure this doesn't occur. So I know it's been a long haul. That this is a pretty significant issue we're trying to address, but rest assured we have a plan in place to try to address it in a constitutionally effective and legal way to deal with some of the disorder that happens when people put up tarps and tents that hides what goes on there. There's a lot of people who come to those areas just to cause harm to people, and we need to do something about it. So thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to be here in this beautiful space in the base here this morning. I am honored and pleased to stand here with Mayor Wu, with Commissioner Cox, with Representative Aaron Michaelwitz, so many of our community partners from around the city, agencies, community groups, and the like, to address this enormously important issue. We should all be inspired by the message of hope that we heard earlier here today, but we should make no mistake that the issue of mass incasts continues to be a seething cauldron of enormously complex societal issues. It's not just one crisis, it's a deluge of them all at once. It's not just an opioid addiction epidemic. It's a public health crisis. It's a public safety crisis. It's a neighborhood crisis. And it's a crisis of human brokenness. It involves a multiplicity of issues, from homelessness to substance use disorder, mental health sickness, joblessness, and lack of access and opportunity to resources for people. The problem right outside these doors affects our local businesses. It affects state agencies and local agencies like our fire department and the sheriff's department. It affects surrounding neighborhoods and even parks where our children and the good people of our communities should be able to play and live peacefully. It affects countless families, particularly for those who are actually on mass incasts. It affects countless families and anyone subjected to the horror of the violence, the drug dealing, the open-air drug market, and the human trafficking that takes place here is gravely affected. We all know that this is not just a Boston issue. The physical confines of mass incasts may rest in Boston, but the people who got here come from across the Commonwealth and even beyond. That's why we, the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, and myself are so very grateful to our legislature and to Governor Healy, as they saw fit to provide $1 million in this year's budget for our Services Over Sentences program. I want to thank our chair and Representative Aaron Michaelwitz and the entire Boston delegation in the House and Senate for your steadfast support. This funding will give the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office and our current partners at North Suffolk Community Services and other new service providers the ability to expand the SOS program and get more high-risk and high-need individuals out of mass incasts and into treatment programs, and provide housing assistance and employment training for them. So let me explain what I mean by that. When we talk about high-risk, high-need, those are the people that are going to come to court. Those are the people that unfortunately will be arrested or will be brought to justice. For those people who are victimized and for those people who need treatment, we are providing services over sentences as an alternative to prosecution. And it's a vitally important aspect of what we need to do, to give people comprehensive long-term paths to recovery and a real way out of mass incasts. We all know the pain and suffering that substance use disorder causes, but we also know that complete recovery is possible. Long-term, and yes, even permanent sobriety must be at the heart of all we do to address the tragedy of mass incasts. Just since this last summer, more than 40 men and women have completed our program or are still SOS participants. I applaud the young men who stood up here earlier today and shared their testimony and their story. There's another woman who stands with us here today, Lori Ann Frazier, and she has been one of our SOS participants. She's in a residential treatment program in East Boston and still going strong after more than 7 months. Amen. Amen to that. And to highlight one of the points that I made earlier, she's not from the Boston area originally. She came here. Lori Ann, we applaud you for your courage, for your commitment to yourself, to a better life, and to your continued recovery. And we'll continue to stand with you every step of the way. There comes a time when we must not only envision what's possible, but together get out and push and pull, to plead and hope and act with a unified spirit of goodwill, to create a climate and an environment that helps lift downtrodden people up, that helps them lift even higher. That is now our calling. That is what we are committed to. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to give the Lewis family a shout out and thank you for hosting this today here and having us talk about addressing this discussion as we have earlier today. And I'm here to highlight kind of the funding discussion that the district attorney talked about, and in reality, this funding conversation shows that this is not just a neighborhood discussion. It is not just a city of Boston issue. It is not just a countywide conversation. It is not just a state discussion. It's an all hands on deck discussion. I think that we in the legislature, working with the governor, by being able to provide this $1 million in funding for the services over sentencing program, I think displays that. I think it shows that this is not just something that's going to come from one entity of government or one conversation of government. And I think as the gentleman from Newmarket described, that we have to be rowing all kind of in the same direction. And I think that that's what we're trying to do here today and highlight that. And I want to thank my colleagues, not just in the Boston delegation. I want to thank my colleagues, obviously, in the entire House and the Senate and the governor for doing so. This program, as the district attorney highlighted, is something that was created under his watch less than a couple years ago. And, this is the first time we're going to actually be able to put some real money into it and actually see. It's been very successful so far, but I think we're going to take it to the next level in relation to having this $1 million earmark that's put in there. It does provide an alternative to prosecution for nonviolent offenders. It is something that is humane and just as an option for folks to explore if necessary. And we're looking forward to seeing it, really have some real impact here. As the mayor alluded to, there's a lot of complexities around the conversations here, but we know that that it's not just going to be taken into consideration by one entity again, like I said. This is something that we're committed to from the state legislature, from the state as a whole, and I think it's something that we're going to continue to look for more options and alternatives to be helpful in this discussion. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to the continued success. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Clark. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of Programs and Services at the Boston Public Health Commission. The Boston Public Health Commission, along with our invaluable partners, provides critical services for people experiencing substance use and homelessness. I also want to take a moment to recognize our amazing staff and partners who are on the front line of the response every day. You are connecting people to treatment, delivering dignified, compassionate care, offering life-saving harm reduction services, providing emergency shelter, creating a clean neighborhood, and placing people who previously lived on the street into their own homes. In recent months, the public safety concerns in this area have made it extremely difficult for all of us to deliver our services. In fact, our EMS team and other first responders cannot access the street in its current state. We are in a humanitarian crisis. It is clear by all in this area that something urgently needs to be done. Our plan in support of a coordinated safety response is to provide temporary measures to ensure the continuity of services while the area is getting stabilized. We will relocate clinical services by our valuable partner, Boston Healthcare for the Homeless program, at our 727 Massachusetts Avenue site. We are eager for these clinical services to resume and get to the people who need them. At that same location, as the mayor talked about, we will be establishing a temporary transitional nighttime space for up to 30 people. This will be a set group of individuals who we and our Elliott case management partner have already been working closely with on their pathway to stabilization and housing. These transitional beds will supplement existing shelter beds that the Mayor's Office of Housing is identifying as part of this response. Much like our existing low threshold sites, where, as the mayor mentioned, we have already housed 149 people into permanent housing, client stays are intended to be brief, and our goal is to get them into stable, long-term housing. We believe that this space is necessary to maintain continuity of life-saving services, promote the safety of our staff, partners, and clients, and support the work of BPD to get the situation in the area under control. In coordination with the Boston Police Department, the Boston Public Health Commission, and city outreach teams will also be increasing mobile outreach across the city where we can engage with people to help them access services. Our goal is to ensure the continuity of public health services for those struggling with substance use and homelessness in the city, putting people in need in services first in a safe and humane environment for all. Thank you, and I now would like to introduce our next speaker from one of our key partners in this work, Dr. Denise de las Nueces, Chief Medical Officer at Boston Healthcare for the Homeless.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank Mayor Wu and her team for working diligently to attend to the safety concerns on and around Atkinson Street. I am Denise de las Nueces. I'm Chief Medical Officer at Boston Healthcare for the Homeless program, where our mission is to ensure unconditionally equitable and dignified access to the highest quality health care for all individuals and families experiencing homelessness in our community. From our main clinic location on Albany Street, our outreach teams depart every day alongside outreach workers from the city to offer specialized care to the people staying on Atkinson Street and in other sites where drug use and overdoses are prevalent. Our medical outreach teams flexibly offer the care that is most needed in the moment. Sometimes that means providing someone on the street naloxone so they're prepared to reverse a friend's overdose. It can mean bringing HIV prevention and treatment services directly to the street so no one misses a dose of life-saving medication. It can also mean offering connections to therapy or addiction treatment, giving a vaccination against an infectious disease, or providing wound care and primary care services. These vital services keep people alive and provide a basic scaffolding when so many other supports in their lives have frayed or fallen away. Our outreach teams are accustomed to going just about anywhere and everywhere to reach people in need. Yet our program recently made the heart-wrenching decision to withdraw staff from Atkinson Street and temporarily pause clinical services due to significant safety concerns. Though we have pivoted for now to alternative outreach spaces, the impact of this decision on our patients has been profound and has disrupted medical care for many of them. We strongly support the creation of more low-threshold spaces and housing opportunities for people staying on Mass and Cass. We welcome the mayor and team's plans for 727 Mass Ave. And we are committed to working with the city and other community partners to seek safer, more humane conditions for people experiencing homelessness in this area, as well as our own staff who work there every day. Thank you.
Okay, that's all on our formal speaking program. Any questions?
Mayor, can you, the police commissioner, talk about what the initial engagement will look like? Will the officers get more training? Will they be working alongside someone? And also, is it even feasible to have enough officers to make sure encampments don't show up somewhere else?
Yeah, and I'll just, before we dive in with the details of the real answer to your question, I just want to kind of emphasize once again, as the rep said, this is really about an all-hands-on-deck approach with all different levels, and so you heard about diversion programs and the expansion of the successes that the district attorney has been leading. At the city level is the three pieces of filing an ordinance in the coming days. It will be filed next Monday for this to be introduced at this next Wednesday's city council meeting. It will be the transitional beds, as has been described by Dr. Clark and Dr. De Las Nueces, and then it will be the enhanced operations that are going to include all of our team members led by the Boston Police. And so there are various pieces of this that all have to fit together at the same time, multiple of which are under planning and will take some additional process steps. So for example, for the ordinance to pass, it needs to have a city council hearing and vote, and that will take some time. And for the beds to be finalized, there's some work and infrastructure investment that needs to happen. So there will still be a little bit of time in the planning, probably in the 2 months range or so, but we hope to have all the pieces finalized and then operationalized by this fall when the weather becomes colder. I'll hand it over to the commission.
Thank you. Yeah, and so not to be presumptuous in the sense that it's all dependent, just as the mayor said, on a city ordinance as far as our ability to enforce laws. Because at the end of the day, that is our primary core, is to partially, certainly enforce laws, certainly in a community policing friendly way. But the fact is that we need to have constitutional authority to do some things, and once that kicks in, yes, we believe that we probably will have the manpower to certainly do this. The issue becomes how long of a period, but based off of the current behavior that we've seen in general with the groups, our hope is it won't be a significant period of time.
Do they get the training done?
So we have quite a few officers that have a lot of training. The fact is, all our officers will need training. Anytime there's a new law, we have to train them on what that is. And so it doesn't exist today, so when it does go into existence, absolutely all our officers will be informed and trained in how to enforce that law.
Storing these belongings. I think a lot of concern in 2019 was that people's belongings were ruined, wheelchairs crushed. We talked about storing them somewhere. Where?
Yeah, there is a storage system in place now, and I'll invite up Dr. Clark or if anyone, or Tanya, or anyone from the team wants to talk a little bit more about storage. So in this period where we've been evaluating the impacts and planning ahead, we've gotten a lot of feedback also about how the current storage system has been working. In January 2022, for example, when we implemented a housing surge and connected everyone to housing, there were some set of belongings then that were put in storage, and then along the way there's been additional transitions with individuals who are moving into different spaces. We've heard the need for more daytime accessible storage rather than kind of permanent storage that is a little bit harder to get to in multiple times a day. But we are definitely working on that, and it will be added to the systems already in place. Want to say anything on storage?
Thank you, Mayor Abby. We have a storage program already in place that was put together for the January 22 housing surge, which allowed folks who were originally in the encampment to move into transitional housing places, and if they had excess items that they needed to store, our partnership with the New Market bid allowed for that. What we're going to do now is make that program more robust and improve it so it becomes a day storage program where people can access their belongings as needed on a day-to-day basis. And we're currently working on, again, with our partners in making sure that program is as robust as it needs to be and meeting the needs of every single person that we're hoping to place in a transitional housing bed or shelter space.
Will the
the engagement center stay open on Atkinson Street?
Want to say, Michelle?
Great. Yes, we are planning to close the engagement center as part of this initial response in an effort to stabilize the street. We are hoping after the street is stabilized that we are able to open it up and resume services at that location. Again, in the meantime, the clinical services, which had been operating out of the engagement center, will be relocated to the Mass Ave BPHC space that I had mentioned earlier.
How long is Atkinson? Clarify, would this ordinance allow you to go in and remove all tents, all makeshift shelters, or just those identified individuals who are already in the process of getting services and shelter, and then you'll be storing their belongings? And then if it's just for those identified individuals, what do you do with that criminal element that doesn't want help?
Yeah, so this is a really important question on why the focus on tents and tarp structures. Our intention is to continue providing the highest level of outreach and accelerate the speed in which we can connect people to housing and services that they need. We're going to keep doing that, but we also need to boost the public safety in the area, and much of that, the concerns around violence, around weapons, human trafficking, which is particularly affecting women in the area, and other criminal acts, it is more often than not connected to and shielded by tents and tarps. And so we believe that, again, in the direct outreach that happens every day, our teams have identified that a very small number of people relative to the kind of population of folks who are present during the day, a very small number actually are using tents and tarps because they are in need of housing, and we are working with those individuals and will continue to do so. But we do not believe that living on the street in a tent in the public way is safe for anyone when there is adequate shelter that is available as an alternative. And additionally, those who are not using the tents and tarps for shelter per se, but to shield illegal activity, that needs to stop entirely. And so the ordinance will give the Boston Police the authority to immediately ask tents to be removed on the public way, and to ensure when there is shelter available, that transportation offered to that shelter and storage for belongings.
How long will Atkinson Street? What do you do with the criminal element that doesn't want help? Though the people that you help these people who want help, but what do you do with that criminal element that doesn't want help and continues to disrupt it? Are they going to be arrested? Are they going to have warrants?
Yeah, and again, I'll invite the district attorney up after the commissioner as well, because there's a process of what happens in that interaction on the street, and then there's a process of what happens in the criminal legal system.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. We're not trying to criminalize homelessness, in general or anything like that. But the fact is that if someone has a place to go, and we have, certainly facilities for them to go to, and they don't obey laws now, then that's where. The only thing we can resort to is actually enforcement of those laws. But the good thing, and it's partner with the DA, as they already described, is that, he has certainly programs to help them get help as well if they need help. For the most part, we always ask people to obey laws long before we actually kick in the enforcement of the laws. And if someone is not willing to obey the law, then we have no choice but to actually enforce the law and arrest them around that.
So what I'd say about that is this, and I think we all know this, by the way, okay? There are people on Mass and Cass that are down and out, that are homeless, that are suffering from substance use disorder, and that need help. And we intend, along with all of our partners, to offer that help. That's what Services Over Sentences is all about, okay? That being said, higher levels of criminality will not be tolerated, and we will prosecute people to the fullest extent of the law for committing serious crimes, like violent crimes, stabbings, shootings, human trafficking. What's happening to our women down in Mass and Cass is absolutely intolerable. And these are the things that we will no longer tolerate. Drug trafficking, drug trade that goes along with the open-air drug market down there, we will prosecute. We will stand with the police to do the job that needs to be done to remove the criminality aspect of what's there, and at the same time offer real, compassionate, and long-term solutions for those who need recovery, for those who need treatment, for those who need services.
When crime is not a factor, and so you're dealing with somebody who's either down on their luck, who has addiction issues or mental health issues, and they refuse shelter, transportation, and in theory, their tarps or tents could be removed. If that were to happen, what happens to them? Are they left on the street? When crime is not a factor, it's just somebody who doesn't want to be housed. What happens in that scenario?
So, and that's a good question. And so the ordinance is, if it comes to be that, they have to remove the tarp or the tent. And if they don't, then we'll remove it for them. In a sense, we're not trying to criminalize, folks that are homeless at all. But there are certain people, and we want to start to get to the exceptions because we can be here all day long. But the fact is, there are certain people who prey upon people who are down and out that come to these areas hidden by shelters and tents and tarps. Right? And really, the law is it's intended to actually, disperse them from the group, to get them either away from the area, out of the city, or actually in the criminal justice system where some of them actually belong. Right? And so that's what the purpose of this is. It's not, all right, and we want these folks to get the help that they need in a safe environment, but these other elements come. Usually the tarps and the tents just attract them, right? Because it gives a hiding space. And so that's what we're trying to do. That's the intent of this, not to criminalize anyone who's having issues with mental health, homelessness, or substance abuse issues.
I did want to expand on your question also to let people know that the city does have an existing encampment protocol that we operate on the day-to-day. So my team, my colleagues, in coordination with many city agencies, respond to instances where people are setting up encampments, not on Atkinson Street necessarily, but citywide. I can tell you we respond to dozens of these reports every single week. And I can't even remember maybe one instance where we've needed to reach the enforcement kind of component of the protocol that comes when someone refuses to move. Most often, our outreach workers report back that when they're engaging people in smaller groups, maybe it's 1 or 2 people, up to maybe 5 people, the uptake of shelter offerings is much higher. And so what our response looks like is we receive a report, outreach is sent, they engage with the person, they let them know that shelter is available. Many times people just aren't aware. They may not be familiar with the area, they may not know where the shelters are, so we can provide transportation, again, storage of the belongings. So more often than not, if the person accepts, wonderful. If they don't, they might pack up their belongings and move somewhere else. We hardly ever reach kind of the enforcement stage of the protocol. I haven't seen it. What I do want to say, and just be really honest about it, is that there are some gaps in the shelter system, specifically as it pertains to couples, people who want to be sheltered together. Our system is kind of binary by gender, men's shelter, women's shelter, so we struggle with couples, have some resources for them, such as the Night Center downtown. And then trans people also struggle with the way the shelter system is set up as that gender binary. So the mayor, ourselves, many of my colleagues in the Mayor's Office of Housing have been having conversations about that so that we can cover the needs of people who struggle to access the traditional shelter system because of their gender identity, status as a couple, or their struggles with substance use disorder.
How long will Atkinson Street be closed down, and what will that look like? Will the street be barricaded off? Will 112 Southampton remain open? And what would you say to the thinking that the closure of the street will simply just push that crowd elsewhere?
Actually, it's just the opposite. The point of it is to turn it back into a public way. So, the street will be, open.
Okay, so the street will be open, it won't be barricaded off. What are you going to do about, obviously, there are large crowds that congregate there every day, people use drugs, people sell drugs there every day. Is that going to be continued to be tolerated, or is there going to be anything done to break up the congregation of people?
Yeah, as we described, if there's a city ordinance, put in place to address the tarps in those locations, then they won't be there any longer, and then the street will we will enforce it as the laws pertaining to public ways. that means streets have to be cleared, sidewalks have to be, cleared, and things, people can't block any intersection in any ways. That's how we're going to treat it, like a normal street.
And 112 will remain open.
Just move from block to block, I guess.
112 will remain open, right, Dr. Clark? Yes. 112 will remain open. And I'll just note, just to kind of give folks a sense of expectation, because it's not going to be immediate in terms of one day it will look a certain way and then the very next day it will look a different way. As mentioned, we need the ordinance to be in place. We need the housing, the 30 transitional beds, as well as the expansion that we're working with many of our shelter partners to identify additional housing. And then we're finalizing some of the details of what the operation will be. There may be a world in which the transition period could require some blocking off of different areas, or just to ensure that we're kind of stabilizing the dynamic in the immediate as the operations begin. But the ultimate goal, and we hope we will reach there sooner than later, and certainly before it becomes very cold, is for the street to open back up as a standard vehicular street as anywhere else. Our understanding of the situation is that much of what draws individuals to the area who are not in need of services and who are preying on those in need is the ability to feel that this is a kind of hub for sheltered illegal activity, which the tents and the tarps make possible. I do want to emphasize that at no point has the city or any of our partners been wanting to condone this kind of activity. There has been enforcement, Boston Police and the Street Outreach Unit all along the way have been incredible partners in taking action for public safety, in acting on the needs and protection that our public health outreach workers and abutters and neighbors in the areas have needed. So it's not a shift in terms of now all of a sudden, quote unquote, cracking down or seeing criminal activity differently than before. We have been insistent from the very beginning that our approach always needed to center housing and services that would end up connecting people to long-term treatment. And we are now at a point where we have confidence in the infrastructure that's been built up so that the public safety piece can really be empowered to do what our officers need to do, with the knowledge that the funding has been secured for greater diversion, and that program is up and running in the district attorney's office, that we have these low-threshold transitional housing sites that we have been running for a year and a half now that have been very successful, that we have the relationships and the coordination and the partnerships with everyone on the ground in a different way than ever existed previously. Sí. Hoy anunciamos unos pasos para establecer la estabilidad para el área de Massencas, donde hay muchas luchas sobre crisis de opiáceos y de vivienda y de salud mental. Entonces ahora tenemos aquí muchos representantes de varias agencias en diferentes niveles de gobierno. Por ejemplo, la legislatura estatal, que provee los fondos para más acciones. La oficina del District Attorney, abogado distrito, para aumentar su programa llamada Services Over Sentencing, que es un programa de diversión para crear la oportunidad para servicios en vez de solamente accountabilidad criminal. Y al nivel municipal tenemos 3 pasos que son uno, una ordenanza propuesta que va a dar la autoridad al Departamento de Policía para más acciones inmediatamente, particularmente sobre los tents, que es un lugar con actividad criminal. 2 es la creación creación de más vivienda, emergencia y transicional, en un lugar, edificio del Boston Public Health Commission para la transición, para los individuales que no tienen otro lugar para dormir, y también más puestas en otros lugares como Pine Street Inn y otros shelters. Y al final, la operación con la policía, Departamento de Policía y Departamento de Salud Pública, para resumir la operación de Atkinson Street y todas las calles en el área, revolver en las calles normales, sin la actividad criminal, sin todas las personas que necesitan servicios, porque podemos mantener las conexiones y la provisión de servicios y también aumentar la acción en la manera de seguridad pública. Okay, sure.
You said that there's almost 200 units, shelter units that have been built since January 2022. There will be these 30 new beds. How many of those are empty, currently available for people to move in, and how many of them are low threshold housing?
Yeah, so all of them are low threshold housing. I'm sure Tanya and others can give a more detailed accounting. I think my numbers were that 170 people currently are in those sites. We also are, as had planned, transitioning the Roundhouse. So the Boston Medical Center will no longer be funding those. It was about 60 units, and so all of the individuals who are currently staying at the Roundhouse have already been connected to their next either permanent housing location or have a spot reserved at one of the other low threshold sites. These locations have, there really aren't kind of empty spaces at any given time, because we're always transitioning the next person into that spot as people are leaving those spots for permanent housing every single week. Do you want to add anything more, Tanya?
Thank you. The 5 remaining low threshold sites, we have 173 people currently living there. We also, a lot of what you see on Atkinson Street is people eagerly waiting to get into those sites. So currently they're full. Thanks to the efforts of Mayor's Office of Housing, Boston Public Health Commission, conversations with additional shelter providers, the Knight Center, New England Veterans, Pine Street Inn, Shelter in Weymouth, there's a few others. They have added extra capacity to absorb the people who may be looking for somewhere to go after this transition period. So that's what we have available. And the reason we need to add extra beds is especially because our low threshold sites have been a place where many people want to engage in stabilization services, and so they are most often full and waitlisted.
Sorry, can I add one more point on this that I think is really important, and Tanya and Sheila and Basol and the entire team have been working really hard on, is that we have an emergency shelter system. And so we understand that the ideal for anyone who is in need of housing is always an individualized, personalized unit that is just yours without anyone else around, where you can, that's your home, and you have a way, that's your space, no one else goes in there, and that feels different from the congregate shelter options that had been the only option in the past, and particularly, as Tanya identified, for certain communities, that hasn't been a good fit. It should not be the situation where, if you want to be in that transitional housing, the low threshold individualized units, that the way to get there is camping out in the street, because it is very dangerous for everyone to be living on the street with no running water, no heat, and just kind of open to the elements. The way that our system is set up to work is that people, when they need emergency housing, should go into shelter while they are working with us to get on the pathway to stabilization, get recovery services, job programs, housing case management, until the next open spot opens up in the low threshold individualized sites. We are moving people through fairly rapidly, and so that should be the system. Now, we have to acknowledge that for many, many people, the old shelter system was not adequate. It is, whether it's for individuals living with mental health challenges and being in that setting is not possible, or those who in years past have had bad experiences, like items being stolen because there wasn't proper storage for belongings, or fear of being next to other people and what interactions might have come of that. So we have been working very hard to transform our emergency shelter system as well, to have more individualized spaces that are available, to have more spaces set aside for various communities and meeting different needs, for storage, for all of that. But that should be the model, where if you are in need, the shelter system is there, and we continue to add capacity and manage that and make it more accessible and high quality for everyone. And then when appropriate and when the spots are available in the low threshold housing, which we continue to try to manage and make more efficient, and which the state has been creating in other parts of the state, which that's been very helpful. That is the way that we're going to go, instead of just having someone be in a tent until something opens up elsewhere.
Are you concerned about a constitutional challenge? Other large cities that have tried to implement ordinances or almost can't have been sued by the American Civil Liberties Union. So are you concerned about that, and would that slow down this plan? And what have you done to prevent that from occurring?
As with any of our issues and policies that we put out there, every organization and individual has their full legal right to weigh in, and the city has certainly faced different lawsuits in even the recent past on various issues that we've made decisions on, and we always work our way through those, whether that is the Long Island Bridge or anything else that we're doing. We have been working to try to ensure that even the very first draft and subsequent drafts of the ordinance are in complete compliance with all of the constitutional requirements. It's been very helpful that in Massachusetts, the Attorney General's office previously had issued some directives related to this issue after a different city enacted an ordinance that did not include requirements for adequate shelter and some of the other things that are here. And so we have models that have been legally challenged and adjusted in the past that have provided a pretty good template of understanding what the legal parameters are. And we continue to reach out to all of the stakeholders who are involved in this issue. And for Boston, that's a long list because we've been at this for some time. Members of the recovery community, different organizations, advocates on the legal side, and we will, as with any ordinance that is proposed, look to ensure that we are having full conversations on the legality of it.
Is the city also thinking about the recent proposal from business leaders for a recovery campus at Widett Circle?
So I know our team has been fully briefed. I've been in touch with those who have been proposing that. I think first of all, it is, I think, a sign of how special it is to live in Boston compared to other places, that the neighbors who have been most impacted by really intense challenges and public safety concerns now 8-9 years into the situation are still doing their best to do research and come up with solutions and try to help rather than just shutting down different things that are happening. So I just want to thank the Newmarket Bid and South End Forum and everyone who has been a part of really trying to see how we could continue moving forward in what feels like a very big problem that is much larger than any one neighborhood or city. They are making a proposal on MBTA land, and that's not something that we at the city control or that they control either. So I think that is one significant consideration that has to be worked through. The city obviously would love for more beds that we could connect people to from anywhere at Massachusetts and across our neighborhoods, but that's not something that we are working on directly because it's not our property, and that I think is a pretty big thing that has to be addressed.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Mayor Wolf. My name is Robert D. Alexander. I had to change my name because I'm a victim of identity theft. My name now, just believe me, is Robert D. Alexander. I was homeless for 12 years. Waiting for housing. Pandemic came. I was a husband, a father, 10 children. I lost everything because I'm a victim of identity theft. I've been trying to contact your office as well as other people to help me. I wasn't born here. Came up here from Maryland, 1966. I've been taken away from my family. I just found out my real dad in 2021. All these years, 57 years, they was telling me somebody else was my father. I just found out my real dad. I found out my dad died in 99. I'm trying to get help from housing. I'm trying to see all you all. I am a victim of identity theft, as well as a homeless person. When they found out I was homeless, they stole all my inheritance because I was homeless. So I see you helping them. Mass Avenue people that are dads. I'm a dad and not a drug addict. I'm a father trying to claim my children. Because if I don't be a father, my children going to end up like Mass Ave.
Thank you, Mr.
So I'm
Alexander.
asking for help.
Yep, I hear
said
you.
my name.
Yep.
So
I hear you, and
please do.
yeah,
I'm
thank
calling
you, thank
all.
you so much. Thank you so much for being here and for just sticking with it. Lee Alexander, I hear you.
The gentleman right behind you, get your name, we'll talk.
So we'll follow up,
Record that,
and we'll find you right after this. I think we're trying to build a city with the infrastructure where everyone can have support from everyone from all walks of life and all different life circumstances. So there's a lot of pieces to this, and I'm grateful to everyone who's been a part of it. Okay.
Thank you all.
All right. Thank you.